Hello, Hayden Williams here, and it's another episode of the Man in the Mirror podcast. It's a podcast where each week I talk to a male guest about their life and work, about some of the key items on their bathroom shelves, and we talk self-care, self-image, and all those good things. So this week, I've got a really interesting guest. It's Jake Xu, who is the co-founder of Shakeup Cosmetics. Now, I've been really keen to chat to someone from the male cosmetics sector. So I was thrilled that Jake agreed to come on the podcast. I think it's a really interesting area, and I hope you're really going to enjoy this conversation and finding out a bit more about Jake and about the brand and about some of the things that he uses in his regime. So without further ado, I'm Hayden Williams on the Man in the Mirror podcast. I'm talking to Jake Xu from Shakeup Cosmetics. Here we go. Welcome along to another episode of Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden Williams here, and it's a real pleasure this week to tell you I'm joined by Jake Xu, who is the co-founder of Shakeup Cosmetics, and it's the first time I've actually had a cosmetics brand on the show, so I'm really looking forward to the chat. Hi, Jake. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much, Hayden. How are you?
I'm really well. Look, thank you so much for doing this and coming on the podcast. And it's such an interesting area, and you know we've done, God, I think 18 episodes so far, but I was really keen to cover this area of grooming and fragrance and all these things because it feels like we're at a really interesting point. I suppose the first thing it'd be great to find out about is what is it in your background that brought you to this and to starting this brand? Is it something that has always been an interest and a passion of yours, or is it more a kind of spotting a gap business type decision?
Yeah, so a bit of a both,
right?
Like many,
as things are.
Like many other, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like many other brands and businesses, the seed was sown when sort of coming from personal struggle,
right?
So it's co-founded by me and my twin brother Shane. So
okay.
We since we were teenagers, we struggled with skin conditions. We had rosacea, breakouts. What have you. And so, that really impacted on our confidence growing up.
Right.
Especially during the teenage years, early 20s,
Yeah.
So that was quite a big concern of ours, quite a big issue for us. And we tried probably every single skincare or cosmetic makeup products under the sun, just trying to find the products that we could relate to and the products
yes.
that our skin was more suitable for our skin type, our skin concerns. But we really struggled on two accounts. One is that as a guy, trying to find those kind of products is hard enough. We don't have that education growing up from our sisters or mother, or you don't talk about those kind of things growing up as a guy. And then when you go into stores, and those kind of brands tend to be marketed at women, so it's quite a high hurdle for guys to ask for help from the shop assistant when it comes to skincare, even more so about cosmetics and shaded products for coverage. So we just figured that we can't be alone in this. We there must be other guys like us, and then sure enough there are. And also our background, our first business that we set up back in 2006 was a marketing agency, and we ran that agency for about 10 years. And majority of our clients were in cosmetic and beauty world. Our key accounts were Boots, Burt's Bees, Molton Brown, and those were our clients, day in, day out clients.
Right.
So we really kind of got a bit of an understanding of how the beauty world works and how to build a beauty brand through that business. So combine the two together, that's really where the idea of creating our own beauty brand to serve underserved demographic just like ourselves, that's where the idea came from.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, and I think you're right, and I guess that formative period when we are adolescents and getting into our early 20s, you have to be so careful with products, don't you? Because you can end up sometimes the more things you're applying to try and help the problem can end up exacerbating it and making it worse, and I suppose especially when you add in the element of the more sort of cosmetic things and shaded products, as you say, I guess what you don't want is to sort of clog things up and make skin even worse. So it's it's very real, and as you say, there's a definite gap there in the market because we've talked about it before on the podcast as well as it's certainly the case with a lot of men's products, but you quite often, you're either in an environment that isn't particularly suited to men, or you're trying to navigate in a store or an online environment where you're trying to sort of find your way through a lot of products that aren't necessarily targeted at you to try, so in a literal sense in a store, finding your way to the back of the department store or whatever, where there might be a small men's section. So it's, actually have a brand
and I think, the men's skin and women's skin, they are quite different.
Yes.
Some people do say that, skin is skin. Actually, it's not quite true. We always say as a brand that, beauty shouldn't have gender, but actually skin does have gender.
Yeah.
And men's skin, for example, is 20 to 25% thicker than women's skin. We have bigger pores, more of them. Therefore, it's more sebaceous and, it tends to be greasier, oilier. And also we do shave more often, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So, that the top layer of skin does get, damaged more often. So that is more sensitive to outside stress and pollutants and things like that. So, we probably break out more easily. So all of these things do need to take into account when guys pick skincare, even more so when it comes to cosmetic product, because it's more complex formulations. And it does need to take all of that into account when you create something that is just for guys' skin type. And also men tend to look for a different kind of finish, for the majority of our customers. And for myself, for example, when I use coverage foundations or concealers or BB cream, I'm kind of looking for that subtle mattified finish rather than a made up look, which is, most of the women products will give you. And also a lot of the women products, because women's skin tends to be drier than men, they go for that kind of glowy and dewy look, which for me, who has got a woolly skin, that's the last thing I want. So all of these things kind of made it necessary for us to create something that's specifically designed for men.
Yeah. Obviously, you grew up in China and came here for university. I don't really know the market there. Was there as many products that you could find, in terms of skincare and medicinal things? Is it a similar sort of market in terms of products for skin and spots and all those things? Did you find the products that you needed in China, at least to kind of help some of your issues?
Not really. We actually fortunately had a bit of a growing up that's kind of like a combined West and the East. We went to international school, and also we had lived abroad as well. So you do get the comparison between the two. I would say that in China back then, when we moved here permanently, when we moved here for higher education, it still wasn't as advanced as it is now when it comes to men's beauty. It was still a lot more conservative, but it was less so than the West, I would say, because I do remember when I was younger, when I was little, I remember this TV ad that was really famous. It was about this guy talking to his factory workers, who are a bunch of girls, how he's using this skincare cream and they should be using it as well. And they're talking about the benefits of it. And that ad was, they had a strapline or something that became really famous catchphrase, and then people are using it all the time in their daily life. So that's what really, they built up that brand to be the number one skincare brand. And it was, now thinking back, it was targeting at men and women.
Right.
And that was back in the 1980s. And this is quite pioneering if you think about it.
Yeah.
For a society such as China. But now if you look at it, the men's beauty and men's cosmetics is definitely a light year ahead of the West in Asia. It's kind of influenced by K-pop, J-pop, Mandopop, the BTS of the world.
Of course,
They all have this glass skin look. They have this kind of eyeshadows, and they all wear makeup, and they have this kind of polished, poreless skin, which of course is achieved by good skincare routine as well as makeup. So that really permeated into the rest of Asia. So Asia is definitely a lot more advanced in terms of the attitude towards men's beauty.
And are there brands in China and Japan and places like that target men specifically?
Yes, many of them. In China, there's so many domestic brands that are designed, is purely for men, whether that's skincare or makeup or both. And also in Japan, they have it's a brand called 3 by 5ism, and that is a men's only brand. They also have quite a few others as well. Korea is just, countless of those brands in Korea.
Yeah. But I think it's, I was thinking about this earlier, that really, in terms of, I'm speaking to you here and we're here in the UK, but it just feels like a brand that certainly in the UK couldn't really have existed, in the last century, certainly, so say 20 years ago. So it's really interesting to me, and I wonder what you think, what's changed in society and in the climate to allow this now. Do you think about that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, timing, it really is a interesting thing. I think if we had actually launched this brand, like you said, 5 or 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have actually survived the first 5 months, just simply because. But even now, sadly, there's still, to a lot of people, there's still that stigma there. God forbid that there's a men's beauty brand for men. What if we go to war tomorrow? It's that kind of mentality still lingers, that still exists in a lot of guys, and we get that on a daily basis on social. But I do think that the societal shift is happening, and it has been happening in the last few years now. I think movements such as Me Too, for example, really kind of wakes up a lot of guys thinking, wait a minute, that's not the blueprint of what a man's supposed to be that I support.
Yeah.
I'm a guy, but that does not represent who I am.
What, that very sort of, that idea of, very sort of binary alpha male, toxic masculinity, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, the toxic or the hyper masculinity, whatever you want to call it, that sort of thing really does not represent the majority of the men anymore. And especially with Gen Z growing up into their own person, their own persona, their own character. They grow up in this kind of society that is so much more fluid, so much more tolerant,
exactly.
And the gender shouldn't really be a thing. The gender bias shouldn't be a thing for them. And then they will come into this world and basically demand that this attitude to be changed because this is outdated. So that is really great to see. And we are banking on that shift in order to grow our brand as well.
And it was really interesting when you said earlier that obviously, we don't necessarily have to see gender in products, but there's a clear difference between male and female skin. So, I mean, are you? Because I notice on the products, it's not as though all over the box it says, men's cosmetics, but is that a deliberate thing to sort of keep the kind of binary nature off the packaging and off the products?
Yes. Thanks for noticing that. I think, from the packaging design point of view, when you look at the men's aisle, there's black and white, silver and blue. There's no other colors in that aisle.
The occasional orange, maybe.
Yeah, occasional orange, thanks L'Oreal. But I think, but if you look at the majority of those brands for men, it's almost like men are colorblind or something. We love colors too. Okay, fine. We might not be, appeal to like a hot pink on the bottom. Maybe you are, but generally speaking, maybe that is not the appropriate color for it. But we do think that, a bit of a glamour is necessary. So we introduced this racing green and the silver foil to just bring a bit of a glamour into a product that you're going to be proud to display on your shelf.
Yeah.
And also we come into this category not with the defensive attitude to, because there's so many brands that come into this category because of that stigma around it. It's almost kind of coming with like, yeah, so what kind of like, attitude. But we're quite matter of fact about it. This is what it is. If you're a guy that you don't want to use color cosmetics, that's totally fine. Just like a lot of women don't want to use makeup, and that's fine too. You use it for your own purpose. You don't use it for anyone else. So we didn't feel the need to put for men, not for women, or that sort of thing on the boxes everywhere. It really is about because I think the gender neutrality is the ideal. One day we will get there, but for men, it's a necessary step between now and then. We need to involve more men into the beauty conversation now.
Absolutely.
Even before we can even talk about the gender neutrality.
I think you're right, and I think it really appeals to me, this sort of kind of almost sort of neutrality to it. You're not sort of leaning in heavily to the masculine, but you're not not apologizing that this is going to appeal to men. But I guess I suppose there's going to be men that come into the sector that might want something that still feels a bit more, inverted commas, masculine, or makes them feel more reassured. And I guess that's okay. But I really like the sort of unapologetic nature of this brand, and the fact that it's not sort of you're not having to apologize for being a man and being interested, and it doesn't have to come at it through some sort of...
Thank you. I just feel like we just didn't feel the need to overcompensate. I think that's probably it's almost like I feel like masculinity comes in so many different shapes and forms. And I do think masculinity is a lot less fragile than people think. Just because you use a product doesn't mean that it all of... It is that thing, kind of being threatened. I mean, I do understand why some people do feel like that. And that's totally fine. It's not their fault or anything. That is just someone's preference. But, because we created this brand for people like ourselves, and we're not like that. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm particularly feminine or anything like that, but at the same time, I do feel that masculinity do come in different shapes.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting, this whole area. And I'm a lot older than you and a different generation. I'm nearly 50 and I have a teenage son. So I'm, seeing this through the lens of someone now who's growing up, and, of course his attitudes are different to mine, and it's great to sort of learn from him. But it's, and I suppose, like you were talking about Gen Z and now, my son who's 14, hopefully they'll come to a stage where they can see all kinds of different role models out there, and they're probably not even imprinted with these same ideas of masculinity that certainly I am, and you will be to a lesser degree. So all of these things will be normalized so much more.
Yeah, same here. I hope so as well. And actually, I think we are in the same generation. I'm 42 next week, so we're in the same age bracket.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're obviously using your products and looking far better on it than I am. I've got
You're too kind.
No. So I've got 50 this year, which is frightening. But the other thing, you were talking about the conditions that have allowed the brand to flourish now, and you talked about Me Too. And I wonder, where do you see social media as a factor, or do you see it as a factor?
It definitely is a huge factor, and we have this love and hate relationship with social media. Absolutely. On some level, it really does pushes a lot of positivity forward, but when it's misused, that's where a lot of toxic elements that you can actually absorb from that platform as well. It is a tricky balance, and for us, we do see a lot of the stigma and abuse sort of happening on that platform. Now, personally, I still think that it's a very important communication tool and channel, because when we get those kind of messages, at least we have a platform to communicate and trying to talk to them and try to not convert them, but discuss and communicate. Otherwise, without this platform, you actually don't really have anything. You don't really have any channel to get your point across or to listen. So I do see it being a really important channel, and certainly with the Gen Z or Gen Z, the TikTok generation, Instagram generation, the fake ideal or the unattainable ideal that those kind of social posts or social phenomenon is posing for young people is very concerning. But what we can do is, more and more people, if we can actually start to use it in the correct way and then try to get that positive message out, the body positivity, self-confidence and things like that. If we get those message out to drown out those toxic voices, I think there's still hope that we can still, use it for the greater good. But it is a tricky balance. It is much greater and bigger than me or a brand can.
Yeah, and I think another interesting side of social media is the whole filtering thing as well, and trying to create that sort of false ideal, or that. And I totally, I understand why it happens, but I guess that's another side of it, isn't it? Sort of creating this almost impossible visual ideal that people are trying to kind of live up to, which is we can't do.
Yeah, the masking, right? I mean, the filtering of two things. One is the filtering of your look and your appearance, and the other one is filtering how your life. Filtering your lifestyle, or what your life is really like. And I think that does make a lot of people, especially someone actually going through tough patches, and then they will see this, and then they will make them even more depressed because they'll feel like everyone else is winning, I'm losing, and that is such a toxic thing, and it really is.
But sort of zooming out from some of the problems, I suppose there are positives inherent in it, and I guess for a brand like yours, the idea that we want to present ourselves online visually, and of course, I suppose even these days with video conferencing and Zoom and all those things, I suppose it the fact that there's, and I guess all this sort of selfie generation thing, but the fact that we feel the need to present ourselves visually so much more, that must be playing a part in where Shakeup sits in the market, do you think?
Absolutely. I think, the filtering and all of that sort of masking, it all come from the desire of looking your best and feel your best. And I think, for us, it's all about how you feel inside. If you wear a foundation to cover those blemishes, if that makes you feel better about yourselves, and then do it, not to do it to please others. And, if you are really proud of your freckles, like my brother is, and he doesn't ever want to cover those freckles. He feels really proud of those, and he feels most confident, he feels good with himself, and that's fine. Don't cover it, and be comfortable in your own skin. But what we promote is the self-care and the self-confidence, as well as the skincare. Skincare is self-care as well, So I think we're mostly focusing on the inner peace and the inner beauty when you look your best, or when you feel like that you're presenting the best version of yourselves to the outside world.
Yeah.
And our products are the tools for them to do that. And I think it is human nature to always, be the best version of ourselves, right? I mean, that, whether that you're on Zoom or you're meeting someone, or whether you just basically lounge around at home and you want to, you want to feel like that you are the best version of yourself. And I think that is the right that everyone should have. And I think men so far has been kind of deprived of the choice of using techniques and tools and products to help them do that. And, that's what we're here to do.
And the sort of pushback that you get, you mentioned some of the people online and stuff. What, if you can summarize, what's the problem? What do you think people feel threatened, or they don't feel like men should be participating in this category, or what are the themes that come up in when people reach out to the brand? I'm sure it's not very nice. But.
Yeah, no, they're not, and I think we don't tend to delete them unless they are personally abusive to the model or the influencer that is featured in an ad or in a post. Those kind of things we do not tolerate. But the kind of messages that we do tend to discuss with them, I mean, the two big camps. One is the sort of toxic masculinity camp, where basically people are talking about, this is, men not supposed to do this. Soap and water is all a man needs, and that sort of thing. And the other side is obviously predictably homophobic comments and things like that. And those are very hard to see, because you really do feel and you hope the world is a better place than that. But that really kind of brings out the worst. So I think it's just really unnecessary. And we get that almost on a daily basis. And our competing, brands, our fellow brands in this category, they get that as well. And some of them more so than us. So it's sad that you're still seeing all of that, which we're hoping to change. But yeah.
And surely the whole issue is far more nuanced than that anyway. Because there could be people who've got real problems with their skin that they want, like you said, want to be the best version of themselves, or they want to cover something up, or there could be a birthmark or a blemish or something. So
exactly,
what's wrong with, you could just want to leave it as it is and sort of celebrate it, and that's fine. But equally, everyone's got the right to present themselves however they want, haven't they? It just feels
exactly.
Yeah, I
think it's more just about respecting each other's choice.
Exactly,
it's totally fine. We can respect that this is not the choice that you want to make. This is not something that you ever want to consider, which is fine. But let other people choose how they want to live their life and how they take care of their skin.
Yeah, live and let live.
Why that is so difficult.
Get on. Yeah, let other people get on with it. Yeah, exactly. But I'm really pleased to see that, it's obviously doing so well. And it's a brand now that people can find on the high street as well, is it, Jake?
Yes, we are in 150 select Superdrug stores. We can also be purchased on superdrug.com online as well. We're on Amazon, and you can, of course, find us on our own website, shakeupcosmetics.com. We are also talking to other retailers so that we can democratize it. I mean, it's very important for us to be able to have a presence on the high street. It is very important to us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it must feel sort of a testimony to the work you're doing and the success you're having that you can be there. But it's important, isn't it? Because to move something from being more niche and specialist, you need it in people's literally in people's faces, don't you? You need to, and also for people to be able to access easily and to have it front of mind, because you don't, obviously to go online, you might get served an ad, but essentially you're going to have to think that's something I want and search for it and then order it. All fine, but that spontaneous thing is important, isn't it? This is something for me. I've seen it in a shop. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. This is about the brand awareness. Want to make sure that people, you need to see it so many times. There's so many different touch points before you make a decision that you want to buy it. But on a deeper level, as a brand, what we want to do is to normalize men's using skincare, men's using cosmetics. If you always remain that online niche taboo brand that people have to basically search or get like a different passcode to be able to find you, you can never really break that taboo or that stigma. So, the only way to normalize it, to democratize it, is to make sure that you're in the high street, you're in those kind of retailers where people, okay, well, if Superdrug stocks it, that must be okay for me to use.
Because I think sometimes, I'm guilty of it myself. I live on the outskirts of London, so it's not that difficult to go into town and go to a big department store or something like that. But it's obviously a lot of people's shopping experience is a kind of regular high street, and there's sometimes this sort of rarefied world of uber expensive and fancy brands in big kind of beauty halls in London or Manchester or Leeds or whatever. It's a lot of people need to just see it on their street, don't they? And you'll just end up picking up the brands that you see in your local, Boots or Superdrug or whatever. So it's fantastic that you're, building up your presence there, and that's where people can find it.
Thank you.
So I'm really keen as well, because obviously someone that's got a cosmetics brand, I'm really interested to hear about your bathroom shelf and some of the key items that you have in your regime. So it would be great to hear a little bit about. Well, I suppose we've talked about skincare. So what does your sort of morning and evening skincare routine look like, Jake? Okay.
So before I knew better, I was overdoing it. I was cleansing multiple times because I had oily skin, like I mentioned earlier. And my misconception was that the more you wash them off, almost like stripping out this oil layer, and then your skin will be mattified, it will be drier. And that was actually doing the opposite.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Stripping away that's natural. No. And that we see that a lot of guys sort of asking for help through our brand. One of the best thing that we can do is to really pass on those educations to guys to really help them out with those kind of misperceptions, as well as misunderstandings of what skincare is supposed to look like. Now I have a morning routine, I have evening routine, and I don't wash my face more than twice a day. I can sort of keep it there. In the morning, I usually use our willow bark or salicylic acid face wash, and that's great for keeping those acne and breakouts at bay.
Yeah,
I do always use toner, and then that toner is quite an Asian guy's thing, and I think toner is definitely getting more popular in the West as well, which is fantastic to see. But I think toner is one of the best things you can use, because things like salicylic acid to help you get rid of the dead skin cells or really clear your skin. After all, it is a wash-off product, so stays on your skin as you rub it in, for 20-30 seconds, that. But you do wash them off. But a toner just basically completes that cleansing process. So you have those kind of sort of ingredients on your skin to make sure that they continue to unclog the pores. And then I will go on with the moisturizer. And I have been using the Anti-blemish moisturizer by Clinique for men for the longest time. And I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, it's good.
Of that product.
Yeah.
So in the evening, I will do a cleanse, but I will usually go for a slightly milder, or actually probably not a salicylic acid-based cleanser. I'll use a cleansing balm, especially if I use BB cream, which I tend to use on a daily basis. Our BB cream has SPF 25, so that saves me having to put on SPF on top of my usual moisturizer. Because SPF, we constantly say to people, wear SPF every day, even if it's raining, if it's cloudy, do it every single day. If you don't want to age, if you don't want to see wrinkles prematurely, wear SPF. That's one of the best things you can do for your skin. But because of our BB cream has SPF and it also covers my redness and rosacea, I just use it as a 2-in-1. So this, one of the best thing that we think that
it's good, isn't it, as well? These kind of products, as long as they're effective in both areas, but if you've got to travel around or you're going to the gym or you're away, actually the fewer things you can have in your toilet bag is better, isn't it? So you've got the the tint and the SPF as well. So it's kind of 2 products in one.
Yeah, and multifunctional is one of the key things. Every product that we develop, we make sure it is multifunctional and it is paring down, so that rather than sort of adding on. So, guys tend to like that.
I suppose there must be I'm sure someone's done research, but there must be a kind of a sort of sweet spot where people will do a regime that's got a certain number of steps, whether it's 3 or 4 or whatever. But I guess if, as you said at the beginning, if you end up doing a routine that has, it's fine, it's just a 10-step routine, and you're going to lose a lot of people. You're going to lose a lot of people, aren't you? If it's going to take too much time or involve too many products, I suppose.
Yeah, it's too much to remember, and guys won't stick to it, and it becomes too expensive and things like that. It's just hard to manage. But like I said, if I do wear a BB cream, I usually use like a cleansing balm in the evening just to wash that off. And it's milder as well. And then I will go on with more moisturizer to keep it moisturized, because if I leave it dry, and then that's when it produces more oil to overcompensate. That's when it becomes even oilier, and then that's when the breakouts happened. So in the evening before I go to bed, I'll use our serum. Our anti-aging serum is my go-to. That's my favorite product. So I do basically just lather on. I go through that very quickly, and I do put a lot on.
Yeah.
Because our skin actually absorbs the ingredients the most efficiently between 3 and 5 in the morning, and I tend to put that kind of the anti-aging serum on before I go to sleep, and then knowing when I'm sleeping, it will do its job, and I'll wake up with a plump, plush skin. So that's kind of my simple routine, and I stick to that on a daily basis. I'm
glad that you talked about a toner product, and that's part of my regime too. And it is interesting with the Shakeup one. It's obviously, part of your range aimed at men, but it's not that easy in a lot of stores to find a toner that's aimed at men. And I don't know, are there different ingredients in your toners and moisturizers that have kind of specific things that are, I'm sure there are, that are aimed at male skin that would be different to if I picked up a different toner that's just more aimed at women?
Yeah, with the toner, and I think toner had a really bad rep because back in the days, and the toner seems to be very much associated with the alcohol. Like toner is very alcoholic back in the day. It's almost about like kind of burning away the bacteria and that sort of thing. And if you are a guy and I shave often, and that could really sting. There's a layer to it. Obviously, you want to have sort of stripping acid kind of things so that you kind of prevent the ingrown hair, especially if you do shave a lot. But our products, doesn't have a high level of alcohol like the traditional sense of toner, so it doesn't sting as much. And at the same time, it has got more moisturizing and hydrating ingredients in there as well. So it doesn't just strip away. It does nourish and actually hydrate your skin, but at the same time, continue to unclog the pores and prevent the dead skin cells building up. So that's really, when we developed that product, that is the brief that we gave to the manufacturer.
Got you. And what about fragrance, Jake? Are you a fragrance fan? Do you tend to put a fragrance on top? I
love fragrance, and I have been. Are we talking about eau de toilette here, like your aftershave?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the fragrance product?
Oh yeah, right, not sort of fragrance in Shakeup, but just do you have a sort of finishing eau de toilette or parfum?
Yes. I my go-to, which is the one I have been using for the last probably 10 years now, is the Hermes. It's called the Mr. Lee's Garden, Le Jardin de Monsieur Lee.
Oh, nice.
So it's it's a yellowish kind of bottle.
Yeah.
I've been using that for the last probably 4 or 5 years, not as long as 10. Before that was the Bleu de Chanel, and that was when I started discovering this new one. I started using this more often, simply because it's suitable for both summer and winter. It's such a fresh Oriental garden. That's the only way I can explain it. And the name is really, really appropriate and adapted because it's called the Mr. Lee's Garden, and it really does smell like an Oriental garden.
Right.
It might have jasmine in it. I don't know what the top mid-base notes are. I probably should do, but I just love the fresh.
The fact that you love it, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it's a lovely scent.
Great, I'll check that one out. And in terms of hair care, what do you have a certain number of steps in terms of hair care? What do you do for your hair?
I really do. I mean, with my shampoo and conditioner, I'm quite particular about those things. So in terms of hair gel and hair wax, I've just been using the L'Oreal for Men for the longest time.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys probably will be like, oh no, don't use that one. But that seems to be one that kind of works best with my hair, because my Asian hair is very thick and quite stiff.
Yeah.
And I envy my white friends who has got like soft wavy blonde hair. They don't even need any product. It's just like very effortlessly, you'll just style it with a bit of a tonic and things like that. For me, it just wouldn't stay in shape unless I use something that's really kind of, stronghold.
Got you.
But shampoo and conditioner, I do separate them. I rarely use like a 2-in-1 type of product. And also do choose the one that's kind of a milder on the skin, because I do feel like it does irritate my skin, because it's, unavoidably, inevitably that you get them onto your face. And I do have sensitive skin, so I tend to go for more natural.
Something milder.
Yeah, something milder, yeah.
And do you shave every day, Jake?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Are you a wet shaver or an electric man?
I'm a wet shaver. And I also... I don't know whether this is my Asian genes. I can't grow a beard to save my life. And I end up looking like a Chinese fortune teller every time I try to grow something. And it just doesn't suit me. And actually, I think it kind of makes me look a bit younger. So that is also a bonus. But I do wet shave. Yeah. My brother, interestingly, he uses electric razor.
And he doesn't get the redness so much.
I think his skin's probably built up the tolerance for it now.
Yeah.
But if I use it, like for example, if we're on business trip or whatever, that I just want to have a quick shave, and I would sometimes borrow his electric razor. It really does irritate my skin. So I think it's just a habit thing now at this point.
Oh, that's brilliant. And it's really good to hear about some of the products, and I'll mention them in the program notes so people can check them out if they want to. So just to return to Shakeup, I'd just be really interested to know where you see the sector going, and what you're thinking in terms of new products and what's happening in the space now. I mean, obviously I guess in some ways it's still in its infancy, but I mean, it must be quite an exciting time to be in this space.
Yes, it is exciting. We're seeing more brands coming into this space as well, which is great. Like one brand doesn't make a category. We want more brands. Each brand brings something different to this category, and we all together can push this boundary forward. We launched with predominantly color range. We launched the BB cream, the concealer.
So they were the first products, were they?
Yeah. The BB cream, concealer, and the lip gel were the first 3 we launched with. And in a way, that was great because that really allowed us to make a bit of a noise in this category. I think skincare is more saturated than cosmetics. And BB cream still today remains our global bestseller. And that is really good to see, because clearly there's a demand for it from guys, similar to us. And then we followed that up with the skincare line as well. So we want to offer the end-to-end skincare regime, right from face wash all the way to a SPF-based BB cream. So within that spectrum, no matter where you are in terms of your beauty journey, you can always find something that is suitable for you. And all the products are designed for all skin types, including sensitive. Where we see us is that we want Shakeup to be synonymous with men's beauty and men's skincare and cosmetics all around the world. And that is the big dream. And going global and export is definitely a key part of our growth strategy. In a way, our arms were kind of twisted when we launched in late 2019. A few months later, we went into lockdown because of COVID. So, we launched with Harvey Nichols back in 2019. Harvey Nichols basically gave us a listing for all 8 stores and online literally 2 weeks after we officially launched. And that was a fantastic boost for our confidence, because clearly,
that's amazing.
Big retailer are taking notice. And but unfortunately, Harvey Nichols had to close their stores for pretty much like 16 months throughout the entire COVID. So we
like getting out the party poppers and then, oh no.
I know. It was really like that. Me and Shane, we actually sort of traveled to all 8 stores, met with the staff and trained them up and talked to the customers. And literally a week after that, actually we're all shut. I was like, great, that's money well spent. But that nobody could have foreseen that, obviously. But for us, being such a young brand, in order to survive, we had to go to where opportunities were, and we knew. As we discussed earlier, Asia was on the forefront of this movement of the men's beauty. So going to Asian market was always on the card. So, at that point thinking, why not? Let's just accelerate our growth. Since UK is in a bit of hibernation, why don't we just basically go international now? And then we launched, since then we have launched in China via cross-border e-commerce on Tmall. Our BB cream is actually the number 1 premium men's BB cream on Tmall platform in China.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we sell 1 every 4 minutes in China. That's the latest figure that I had from our distributor there. And so it really did take off there, and that enabled us to develop more products. And then we, since launched in Australia as well, we're now in Maya department stores in Australia, and we're talking to other distributors in other markets as well. So the dream is for us to be everywhere and to be the go-to brand when guys think about skincare, thinking about concealers, blemishes, and they will think of Shakeup.
Oh, it's such a fantastic story, and I'm so thrilled to hear how well it's going.
Thank you very much.
The name of the podcast is Man in the Mirror, and I'm always nosy and sort of keen to find out from the guests what they see when they look in the mirror, because sometimes there's stories of I hope, and what I'd love to hear is people who feel sort of comfortable in their skin and what they see now. But obviously there's a spectrum of people who look back at a certain time of their life or were happier with their appearance at different times, and obviously different attitudes to treatments and changes that we can make. How do you feel, Jake, when you look in the mirror now in terms of what looks back at you?
It's an interesting question. I think like many other people for the longest time, you kind of notice what I noticed, the imperfections. You see the gray hair, you see the spots, you see wrinkles, you see, tired eyes. And especially if you're stressed from work, or if you're sad and you look in the mirror and you really see a self-reflection of that person, and it's not a great sight. But I think lately, I don't know whether you've read the book, it's kind of Midnight Library, where it's basically about this kind of sci-fi story of this person's sort of having experiences and tastes of the same person, but in different universes, in different parallel universes.
What's it called, Jake? Midnight Library?
Midnight Library.
Oh, yeah, no, I've not read that.
So it's a very funny, hilarious book to read, and it's actually quite philosophical. The whole story is about that you could be living many lives in a different parallel universe, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're happier necessarily in another life. Don't give up on the one that you have got.
Right.
And every time I see the mirror after that book, I kind of like imagine that the person inside the mirror is actually me in a different universe, and actually looking back at me, thinking I am that person's reflection in the mirror. And sometimes if I am stressed or if I am sad, I can't imagine that person living a different life, might have different kind of challenges, but might be happier or might be sadder. And then they kind of have a bit of a balance act there to think, do you know what? Like, don't give up on the life that you have. There is so much goodness in this. And enjoy what you're doing now, and then don't get bogged down by all of this kind of stress, because no other lives in any other parallel universes are necessarily better than the one that you have now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a bit of a self-reflecting, self-balancing act every time if I want to be a little bit deeper.
I really like that. And that idea of sort of, kind of you're taking yourself out of yourself a little bit, and having that kind of, having that time to reflect and
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't do that every time I see it. I mean, it's not every time I brush my teeth, I'm thinking, oh, well, where are you? I mean, I don't do that all the time.
What universe are you in?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I guess it's good to sometimes that separation, and to, allow yourself to give yourself a bit of distance and perspective, I suppose, isn't it? That's what it is.
That's the word. Yeah. You kind of step out of that situation, step out of your own head in a way, and then just kind of have a bit of helicopter view, and I think it does give you perspective.
And you talked about teenage years where maybe skin was more of an issue. Are you at a stage now where you're much happier with your appearance, and does that give you a new level of confidence that perhaps might have been missing for a little while? Yeah,
I had to say that I am really, the Shakeup is actually about the why we do it. That really kind of gives me the purpose for myself. Is kind of like a self-discovery through this brand, which is why we love doing what we do so much, despite how stressful it can be sometimes. Because you really do feel like there's a purpose in that you're helping, especially when you're helping other guys. We have this service where guys can actually send in the selfies, and we'll advise them on the best shade that will suit their skin, because they might not, they might not know which shade is the best for them. So we ask them to send in a selfie and we can advise. And what we tend to get is actually, as a follow-up from that, they will be asking, okay, I also have this skin issues. What do you do? What can I do? And when we had that, we experimented with a pop-up in London for 3 days last Christmas. And we have guys coming in, and it was a really sweet guy who came in to ask on behalf of his son, because he sees his son struggling with the skin issues and really his self-confidence is being affected. He came in asking for products so that he can buy it to give it to his son. That is heartwarming, and that is lovely to see. And I just make you feel like you're really doing something to change someone's, you could potentially change that person's confidence and really kind of get that person to fulfill their dreams. That really kind of give us a purpose. And I deep down, I feel a lot better about myself for what we do. And appearance-wise, because I've been learning the self skincare routines, and actually my skin cleared up a lot, compared to, 3 or 4 years ago. And it does really kind of boost my confidence. Yes, I still use BB cream, but mostly for the SPF, as well as just having that kind of, even out look. And it's a habit of using it. I love the scent of it. But in terms of the overall confidence, I do feel a lot more confident when we go out, talk to customers, when we go on business trip, when we go to events, socializing, and just be more comfortable in our own skin.
Yeah.
And I do work out a lot more than I used to as well. And I learned how to look after my body and mind, even though sometimes it's hard to find time to do that. But, I think overall, it kind of makes you feel more positive about yourself and more optimistic. And therefore, you do take better care of yourselves overall.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I had another guest on the podcast from the skincare industry, and he made a really good point that I hadn't thought about before, is that sort of the blessing and the curse of working in sort of skincare industry, as I suppose, when you mention it to people, or people know what you do, the first thing they're going to do is sort of look at you as the, almost the kind of billboard of the brand, isn't it? Go, it's working really well for him. Jake looks great. Yeah. And but it's I suppose an added pressure sometimes, isn't it? Because people expect to see the results on your face.
Yeah, if you see a nutritionist that actually looks like so malnourished, you're like, I don't think I want to listen to you. It's the same thing, isn't it? It really is the same thing. We do feel that double-edged sword. I mean, you do have to look after yourselves because you're basically the walking billboard for your brand. So you have to preach what you teach.
Exactly. Well, from listeners won't be able to see it, but I can see Jake on screen, and he's an excellent example of his brand. Let me tell you.
Thank you.
So the final thing, Jake, is this kind of massive question, which you can take in any way you like. But I wonder what makes you happy. What are the things that bring you joy?
Gosh, traveling makes me happy.
Really?
I mean, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. That might be probably shallower than the answer you were expecting.
Oh my God, no, not at all. No, I mean, I don't think so at all, because I think, the cliches of, travel, broadening the mind and, learning from other cultures and experiences. No, absolutely not. No, I'd be with you on that.
I think traveling, whether it's by myself or with the loved ones and, building memories, that it really is what makes me, that's probably where I am the happiest.
And you get to combine, I guess, with Shakeup, does that necessitate quite a lot of global travel and having to visit other territories anyway?
We're starting to do that recently more often because obviously during COVID we couldn't. But actually recently we have just been to a trade show in Singapore, and we did actually eventually went to meet up with our distributors and checked out our products in Myer department stores in Australia.
Check how they look.
Yeah, that was a great feeling because it's a brand that you have created that displayed in a country you've never been to. And it's a really interesting feeling.
Oh, I can imagine.
But yeah, it's one of the perks is that we can actually get to see more of the world when while we're doing what we love. But I think traveling with my partner, for example, just making that memories, and I used to take a lot of photos and videos and on my phones were with my DSLR when we're on holiday. But nowadays I try to consciously stop myself doing that because I feel like I need to capture all of this using my eyes and then store them in my head rather than just going back through the photos on my phone. I just feel like it's hard not to do that, but I try to stop myself from doing that
and be a bit more sort of present in the moment. I totally know what you mean. So if I could give you a ticket straight away, sort of money, no object airline ticket right now, and you could go somewhere else, where do you think you'd go?
Oh gosh, either Tokyo or Hawaii, I think.
Could do both. Could do a stopover and then...
you can. Yeah,
two.
you can. I'll tell you why those two places.
Yeah.
I think, for Tokyo, I feel like is the buzz, and I feel like I'm charging my battery every time I go there. It's that kind of, constantly going, and it's civilized, is disciplined, is routine, and everything just works, clockworks, and I feel like I'm never disappointed when I'm in Japan, and
I love that. I love that idea of sort of a place that you can recharge you and give you new ideas and energy.
Yeah, because everyone is basically going somewhere. They have a purpose, and then they're driven, and they're doing something, and the noise and the lights and everything is just, it's the stimulations really kind of charges your battery. And Hawaii, I didn't expect it to like it so much, but we went there, and it was just a fantastic experience. It's just, it is the opposite of Tokyo. So you really kind of let loose, and you because I do feel like you also need to have that
the switch off
relaxation as well. Yeah, the switch off, the cut off as well, in order to just go again. So that's the reason why I picked those two places.
Lovely. Well, I was lucky enough in my much younger days. I lived in Japan for a couple of years teaching, and in the mid, so long ago, in the mid-90s, but loved the country so much, and particularly Tokyo. I was in just outside a city called Nagoya, which is on the main island. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. It's even for me as someone in the early, just left university. It was this kind of this sort of jolt of energy, and such a different culture to the UK. But I still, if photos come up, I seem to follow all these really amazing Japanese photographers who take cityscape kind of photos on Instagram, or if ever there's a conversation like this and Japan or Tokyo comes up, my eyes light up, and I think there's a combination of finding it such a fascinating, beautiful, varied country and all that, but also I'm sure it was a kind of time in my life where I had just left university, didn't have so many responsibilities, but a real kind of formative and special time for me. So I totally know what you're talking about when it's applied. I think, in fact, if I'm asking myself the same question, I was given a ticket, I'd probably head to Tokyo as well. So I'll see you there.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Yes, see you there. I think you're so right. And I really do encourage a lot of everyone to do that. I think you obviously had a similar experience to mine as well, as that around that age, you get to see the world, and you really have that. I think it really does open your mind when your mind is ready to be opened.
Yeah.
And that is just...
You're right. It's a good time. And I think also, hopefully that kind of experience can then sort of travel with you in life, where, I definitely think I came back hopefully more open-minded, but also that I think you can, there's a tendency when you finish university that you know it all, and you're kind of king of the hill, and you kind of got it all sorted. But it's quite a good lesson to realize that you can, if you're thrown somewhere completely different and in a different culture and a different experience, that we don't really know anything, and that there's a whole other different worlds going on, maybe even just down the street, but certainly in other countries. So I think that in the nicest way, a kind of humbling experience of just stepping back and seeing that there's other ways of doing things, there's other ways of living and thinking and all of that. So I've tried to, and I think it's that idea of just being open to new things and not feeling like you've got all the answers, because I certainly haven't.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. No, great. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time. It's been honestly such a pleasure to hear you what's going on with the brand and hear about how and why it all happened, and wish you every success. And I know it's going to go from strength to strength, and it's something that's really needed, and is answering a real, fulfilling a real need, and long may it continue. So look, take care. Thank you so much. And I'm going to mention some of the products in the program notes, and how people can find out more about the brand and where they can find it. And I hope to speak to you again soon.
And thank you so much. Thank you very much as well for providing this platform for us to talk about these things. I think it's such a rare platform for us for this kind of topics, for men to have a place like this to talk about it.
Oh, thanks.
So, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And that's definitely the idea, to just, open up these conversations and allow people to hear about it in a more relaxed setting where you can have these kind of chats without it either feeling sort of too much like a kind of sales pitch. Because I think, it's really interesting and important to get some context around some of this stuff and to kind of, to demystify it. And I certainly, get really interested in the stories of the brands and the founders and how these things come to be. And obviously, from what you've said, you can definitely tell that Shakeup is it's a business opportunity, but it could only have come from you, and it's a product of your experience and your journey so far. So I know people were going to find it as interesting as I did. So thank you so much, and love to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jake. Take care. Huge thanks to Jake. I really enjoyed our chat, and I hope you agree there was some really interesting issues covered there. And the more you hear about sort of cosmetics and products like that, it's not just about, the cliches around, being just vanity. You can see that it's really important in terms of people's self-confidence, and there's so many reasons why people use it. And even if it is just that people want to look good, there's absolutely no problem with that. So it's a really important conversation to have, and, great just to find out a bit more about Shakeup and Jake himself. If you want to find Shakeup Cosmetics on Instagram, you can do. They are at shakeup.cosmetics. So it's shakeup, all one word, .cosmetics on Insta. And their website is simply shakeupcosmetics.com. So you'll find in the program notes some of the products that Jake was referring to, and some of the products that he uses in his regime. So you'll get more information and links there. If you want to find out more about the Man in the Mirror podcast and what guests are coming up and episodes you might have missed, you can find me on Instagram at Man in the Mirror Pod. And it would be great if you could leave any reviews or stars or any good things like that on your podcast platform of choice. Look, I'll be back next week with another great guest. Really appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. My thanks to Jake Xu. Thanks to you. And I'll see you next time. Take care.